up-close video. This one is for Creative Expressions Festive 5x7 embossing folders, 3D embossing folders. It's just going to be a really quick video because I just had, I'd done a bunch of samples. I think I've got 13 different ones and there are 4 different designs. And I thought while I have all of the samples here, I might as well not be lazy and film an up-close video for you so you can, you know, see what these kind of embossing folders look like and what kind of things you can do with them as well. So, the first one is called Snowy Forest Glade, and it's got a beautiful line of trees that's kind of disappearing off into the distance, and you've got some beautiful snow in the centre. I think this would look fantastic with the Jane's Doodles stamps that came out recently as well. You had like Santa and the reindeers in a car. I think that would look fantastic in the foreground, or 2 of them going past in the snowmobile as well. I think would look fantastic, but I just kept them really simple for my cards. So for the first one, I actually used Distress watercolour pencils on this. I just embossed it onto some Creative Expressions watercolour card, and then I just used the side of the Distress watercolour pencils to kind of add colour up the trees, and I sort of built up quite a few layers on this, but I started by adding the colour with the Distress, and I also did it over the snow as well with the Speckled Egg. I didn't find that that was very pigmented for how I was trying to get a light coverage on here, so I did do a little bit of ink blending with some tumbled glass, and I did do a little bit of Rustic Wilderness ink blending onto the trees as well. I also brought in some, I think it's called Golden Lime, the gilding polish that I used on here, but it's just a really subtle gold kind of one, just to add a little bit of detail and pick out some of that 3-dimensional detail from the embossing folder as well. You can see the falling snow in the background, and then I also put some of Francoise's embossing sprinkles on there as well, so you can get some like really cool blobby snow kind of effects. I love the irregularity that you get. It really does look like snowfall, and it's so different to you just sprinkling on ultra thick embossing powders. She has some like massive shardy pieces in there that give you these lovely big blobs of snow, so really, really gorgeous. Then this one is embossing onto black card, and then I only just put this palette away because I was just showing it in another video. I used the Jane Davenport's Whimsical Watercolour palette, and I used these 2 greeny tones to go on the trees, which is Rolling Hills and Frog Pond, and then splatting in the background I used these 2 tones, which are Dewdrops and Fairy Wren. So those 2 gorgeous blue tones that are in there to do some splattering in the background. Then I also did actually come in with a white gel pen and actually drew over some of the embossed snow in there as well. But really, really gorgeous, and you can just get that effect by using pearlescent watercolours on top of black cardstock, or you could use your polishes, or your Gilded Touch, or your Wax Lyrical, or your mousses, or Opal Blaze. There's so many different products that you could use to create this kind of effect, but I decided to go with iridescent watercolours to do this one, and I've just used a Wordie on here. Actually, the Wordies that I've used on any of these cards are the brand new set. It's called Season's Greetings, and it's number 21 if you're looking for this as well, and I will have affiliate links to all of the embossing folders and some of the extra bits and pieces that I've used on the cards in the description box below the video and on my blog post as well, and I really appreciate you taking the time to click on them and purchase through them. They'll mostly be to CRaFTi for the UK and scrapbook.com for the USA, because I think they're the main companies that I'm affiliated with that actually stock Creative Expressions goodies, so those will be the 2 that I'll mostly be linking to, but those are, that's where the Wordies are from on these. Then the next one, I absolutely adore how this one turned out. So this was a navy blue cardstock. I originally put the Silver Dream gilding polish on here, but then I was like, hang on, I want some more depth to this, so then I took the Mediterranean blue gilding polish and put it over the top, and because I'd already put some Silver Dream on there, it gave a really cool variation in colour, because where it just touched the card it's the darker blue, where it went over the Silver Dream it went lighter, so I really love how this one turned out, and I thought a New Year's card would work nicely for this. It's sort of, I don't know why blues make me think of New Year, but just a really lovely fresh kind of New Year's sort of a card. So that's that one. Then the next embossing folder in the collection is called Poinsettia Bliss. It's a gorgeous poinsettia design. It's got berries in here, different types of foliage, and a really large poinsettia in the centre of there as well. So the first one that I did, this was just working onto white cardstock that I had embossed. I think it actually was watercolour cardstock, this one, because I was thinking of doing the distress watercolour pencils on it, but because they came out so lightly on that tree one, I did actually go for distress inks on this one, and I did distress inking first, then I used a bunch of different gilding polishes, then I found the detail was kind of getting lost because the distress inks weren't deep enough in colour, so after doing the gilding polish I came back with more distress ink and ink blended over the top with lots of browns and stuff to really get down into that detail and make all of the cotton kind of pop out. And I really like how this one turned out in the end. I wasn't sure, there was a stage where I was like, oh, I don't know if this is actually going to work out how I wanted it to, but I think I rescued it with that heavier application of some dark greens, dark reds and ground espresso distress inks. It really sort of helped the details come out, and I also put some copper on here as well, so it's mostly, I think this one's called Dragon something, the green, the red might be Indian red, something like that, and then I've put the copper over the top, but really gorgeous colours of the gilding polish. I absolutely adore Cosmic Shimmer gilding polish, and it really lasts a long time as well. I've still got pots from like 7 or 8 years ago and they're still going strong, so a really gorgeous product to have in your stash if you've never tried it before. And then this is a Sue Wilson Happy Christmas. This is from her collection from June this year. So Happy Christmas, cut in craft with shadowed with white and then onto some vellum as well to make it stand out. This one was an experiment. So my friend Rodgers recently sent me the set of the Vault colours of distress paint. So I really wanted to do some different things with distress paints. I will be doing some videos on it as well. They might have already come out before this one, or this one might come out first, I'm not sure. But I really wanted to play with more distress paints, and I also bought myself the sanding things from Tim Holtz too. He's got like little sanding discs that stick on your mini ink blending tools. So I embossed this onto craft card, then I painted it with distress paint. So this was, I think it's Festive Berries, Aged Mahogany, Pine Needles and Lucky Clover, and then a little bit of fossilized amber, I think maybe it is, and I mixed the two together to get that berry kind of colour as well. So I just painted it with distress paints, waited for it to dry, and then sanded it with that sanding disc to reveal the craft. And this is on the debossed side, so you've got more of that detail showing, whereas on the embossed side the detail is pushed back into the card, but on the debossed side the main parts of the petals are pushed backwards and the veining detail is upwards, so you can really sand it off nicely. And then I just used Season's Greetings, which is one of Jamie Rodgers' new dies from his Christmas Essential Sentiments set, and then I've just used a couple of strips of white card as well to kind of tie that all together. But I wasn't sure if this one was going to turn out very well either, and actually when I was painting it in, I'm pretty sure some of these were supposed to be green, although a poinsettia is made up entirely of leaves, so it doesn't really matter that I coloured some of them red when they probably should have been green. But you can see there actually, is that the same way up? No, this way. How like the different look that you get if you colour some of the extra petals or leaves in red versus green as well. You can kind of see the different look that you can get. This makes it look like a much larger poinsettia, whereas this one's more of a controlled sort of poinsettia as well, so you can get the difference between them. And then I loved the debossed look of that so much, but I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out very well because I hadn't sanded it at this point and it just looked like a right mess with all of the paint all over it. So I also debossed into some navy blue cardstock again, and then used the Silver Dream gilding polish over the top, and I absolutely adore how this turned out. And I also cut this slightly smaller. I had a scrap of this navy blue card and it wasn't quite big enough to be my normal card panel size, so I just cut it slightly smaller so I could fit the rectangle onto the scrap that I had. And I really love how this turned out, and I think that extra large white border works really nicely with it as well. I did a diagonal torn bit of vellum, and then I used one of Jamie Rodgers' Essential Christmas Sentiments again on there, Merry Christmas. So really pretty. I absolutely adore this one. And if you're working on slightly smaller cards, even though these folders are relatively small, being 5x7, you still have that ability to move your cardstock around. So this one I moved it so the poinsettia was kind of right near the bottom of the card, whereas this one it's more towards the middle. So you can really play around with sort of where you put the poinsettia on your card as well. The next one, which I have a feeling is going to be a real big favourite, is the Shimmering Snowflakes. I actually labelled all these myself. Don't think that they come with a label on. But actually, a tip, I just did this before I filmed the video, but a tip for labelling your embossing folders is feel inside them. You know, when you're using an embossing folder, you mostly want the embossed side. It's usually a rare occasion where you're doing some kind of technique and you want the debossed side, but you mostly want the embossed side. So I always label it on the side that if I put my cardstock in nice side up, it will emboss it. So feel inside. You want the raised portion to be over here, so the pattern that's raised is over here and the pattern that's sunken in is on the side that you label. And then if you put your cardstock in pretty side up, you know if that label is on the front, it's always going to emboss your cardstock. That's how I always tend to label all my embossing folders. So this one is Shimmering Snowflakes, and I actually did 4 different cards for this one because I really liked it. So this is embossing onto some blue cardstock. I think this one's called Azure Blue from the Foundations range of cardstock, and I used the Mediterranean blue gilding polish over the top, just in a really haphazard kind of way. And then once I had added the polish and it had dried and everything, I literally just took it into my guillotine, chopped it into random different like wedge kind of shapes, and then didn't even bother about matching up the pattern. I just put them back together in a random fashion, and it looks really cool, doesn't it? And then I actually stuck them on 3D foam, flat to the card, 3D foam, flat to the card, 3D foam, and then I finished off with one of those Wordies from that new set of Wordies as well. So that is one really simple way of using that embossing folder. Then this one is embossing it on 2 different colours of cardstock, but embossing it in the same place and then ripping the top one but placing it back over the top, so you can see the pattern is continuous, but this is torn down the edges and raised up on 3D foam because it's a different colour of cardstock, and I thought that worked really, really nicely as well. This has got I think it's called Blue Waves, the gilding polish that I've used on this one, and this was the minty coloured gilding polish on this one. Again, just really like haphazardly applying it rather than being really precise just to go on the snowflakes, because I wanted to catch some of these strings going up there as well. I just did it really haphazardly. And then I've used Snowflake Wishes as the sentiment, which is again from Sue Wilson's June release from this year. She had a gorgeous stained glass collection, and this was one of the sentiments to go along with one of the designs. So that's Snowflake Wishes. Then I've done another one with Snowflake Wishes, and this one was doing that letterpress technique. I think I used Salvage Patina Mermaid Lagoon, what was the other colour that I used? Speckled Egg, Distress Oxides, pressing them onto the folder so that they would press into the background of the embossed side of the folder. However, I'm never very good with that technique. It did work better this time, but it was still very patchy in the background. So instead of just mostly leaving it as it was, I decided to add something to the snowflakes, and this is actually the Foundry Wax from Tim Holtz. So I treated myself to 1 pack of it, the one that comes with the silver, which I think is called Sterling, possibly, and the statue kind of colour. So I used the silver one on this one, and again it's kind of haphazardly applied to try and catch some of those strings in there as well, but it gives a really cool mirror-like shine to your project. It is kind of a little bit difficult to apply neatly, but I quite like the distressed kind of look that it gives you, and I guess that's why Tim Holtz loves it, because it gives that gorgeous like distressed sort of effect. And then I've also used the Snowflake Wishes sentiment on there as well. It's got a shadow of silver mirror card to kind of go with that gorgeous Foundry Wax, and then I've done a darker blue die cut in the front that's kind of a similar colour to the Mermaid Lagoon Oxide that I've used on there. Then the final snowflake one, this is onto the Cornflower blue cardstock from Creative Expressions, and I used, I don't know if you can really tell, but if you look, you can kind of maybe see it. It's got like a matte effect to it, and that was a matte chalk polish over the top. So I used a matte chalk polish, and then I also came back in with some Ultra Sparkle paste in the Frosty Sparkle colour, which is the clear white kind of one, and it actually has a lot of iridescence in it, so I just tapped a load of that on to give the beautiful iridescence to it. But it also has this matte feel to it as well, where I've used a matte chalk polish. You can kind of see right in here, you can kind of see the actual cardstock colour and then a little bit of a lighter colour, which is the matte chalk polish on there. But I think I love matte chalk polishes for embossing folders because it gives a really different look to them. And that's just another really simple card. And then I've used White Christmas from that Wordies set. And then the final folder from this little collection is called Nature's Christmas, which I don't know which is my favourite between Nature's Christmas and the Shimmering Snowflakes, but I did absolutely love working with this one. And the first card that I've done, actually, let me tell you what's in here first. So you've got poinsettias, gorgeous, like large pine kind of branches, these funky kind of ones that have got berries in there as well, just gorgeous, like funky berry sprigs in there too, and these little 4-petaled flowers as well, and individual berries placed around. But this first one, this is satin mirror card in the silver finish, with debossed with the folder, and then I took that sanding disc again and I just brought it down in the same orientation, so linear fashion, sanding in one direction, just sort of scratching the surface. And you can kind of see this cool distress look that it gives, and it's enhanced because I inked over the top of it with some hickory smoke distress ink, and then where the sanding tool had sanded back the cardstock, you can really see it on that poinsettia, the porous like interior of the cardstock really soaked up the ink, and in all of the little scratches it did it as well. So you just ink over it, and then once you're happy with the inking you can just use a bit of kitchen roll to wipe off the excess from the mirror card. And then you get that beautiful satin mirror card in the debossed areas, but then the scratched version of it on the background portion. I really like how that one turned out. And again, just a really simple wordy sentiment on there too. Then this one is actually using one of the diffusers. So my mum bought these for me actually. We shared the packet of them. She's got the oval kind of one, and I've got the circle and the... Oh, she's got the sentiment kind of oval. I've got the normal oval and the circle one, but this was just using the circle one to emboss the outside here, so it's left it with an aperture in the centre with no embossing. I really love these, they're really cool. That was the first time of using one of them. I was hoping I would like them, and that's the first time using one, and I think it's a really cool idea. I really enjoyed that. And this is, so when I emboss one of these in my tangerine, I use the green plate and the pink plate, and then this is roughly the same thickness as the pink plate, so I just put this on top of the folder, then the folder, and then the green plate, and ran it through, and it worked really well to emboss that. So just check these diffusers against a thickness of one of your plates that you use when you're using an embossing folder, and see if you can switch it out, or you might have to switch it out for a thicker plate and use some shims of cardstock in there as well. But I will definitely be doing some more videos using these because I really enjoyed doing that, but I wanted to tell you what I'd used on it. And then this was actually the leftover paint from that poinsettia card. So the poinsettia one that I did on Craft, where I'd been using the distress paints, I had leftover paint, so all I did was just really messily just did some stripes of the paint on the background, and then just sort of left it as it was. Actually no, I splattered some water on it. It's got like watermarks in here as well, because I wasn't sure kind of what I was going to use the background for. I thought I was just going to save it for something else, but then I remembered those diffusers, decided to use that on there, and then I used some of the copper gilding polish all around the edges. Again, I wasn't being too careful. I didn't mind if it got in the background, because you can't get your finger like right up to the edge of the detail, so it kind of gives this halo kind of effect around the elements, which I really like the look of. So that's how I did that. And then to emphasise this circle, I watered down some of the gilding polish and painted it on haphazardly with a paintbrush as well. And then I put the Merry Christmas wordie in the centre, but before I stuck that down I felt like I needed a little bit more black in there, so I took a fine black pen and just scribbled around in a circle and did a few doodles, and then put the Merry Christmas on there. And I also splattered some of the gilding polish as well, because I'd already watered it down for scribbling on the circle. I splattered some in the background too. And then the final card, which is actually one of my favourites. This was, I love this colour scheme. It's a really beautiful colour scheme, and it was actually antique linen, which mostly gets taken over, pine needles and faded jeans, and I really love this kind of colour scheme. I did another card where it almost looked like this colour scheme, but I'd used embossing powders to create it, and I was like, I really like the effect of that, so I just picked some distress colours that I thought would work really nicely, and I embossed it first, Then I ink blended it. So I focused the blue ink blending on the poinsettias. I did some of the antique linen in a lot of the background, and then brought some of the green over the sort of pine places and the foliage and stuff. And obviously as you're ink blending, you kind of lose a little bit of that antique linen. You can see it in there in different places, but it does sort of get a little bit lost, but I think it adds to the overall effect. I think you need it in there, even though you can't quite see it in the finished card. Then I got some water on my fine paintbrush and tapped it all over to get that little splattery kind of effect in the background. Then once that was dry, this is the other colour of foundry wax that I have from the little 2-pack that I got. So I think it's called Statue, this one. But it's like a coppery goldy kind of colour. And so I just applied that. I did 2 coats of it, and I did the same on that silver snowflake one. So I did 1 coat, and then anywhere that I felt like I hadn't put enough on, I just added a bit more so that it would give that beautiful high shine that the foundry wax gives. You kind of need to have a certain amount of it to get the real high shine kind of effect. So you can see, like right here, you got a really good high shine piece because there was obviously a little blob of it there. And actually when you're heating it, you can actually see it move together. I watched Tim Holt's video, there's another really good shiny bit there, but I watched Tim Holt's video and he was saying about how it's a leafing metallic and they need to come together to create that beautiful metallic effect, and you really can see it moving towards another piece of it when you actually heat it to get it to go gorgeous and metallic. So that was how I did that card as well. And then I've just used Happy Christmas from Sue Wilson's collection as well. I've just stacked up 2 in white, put them on a vellum backing, and then stuck them in the centre. So I really hope you enjoyed this up close video looking at the brand new 5x7 embossing folders from Creative Expressions and their gorgeous festive designs of embossing folders. And hopefully seeing a few different techniques that maybe you haven't seen before, or maybe it's just refreshed your memory of a couple of ways of using embossing folders and things as well. So if you want to get hold of any of the embossing folders or as many of the Cosmic Shimmer products that I can remember that I've used and link them below the video, then there will be affiliate links down there. And if you sort of look under the title, it kind of says a bit of what I've said, and then it says more with an ellipsis. Just click that and then it will say more again, click that, and then the full list will appear underneath. And you can also find my blog post link in that bit under the video, which will give you picture links for all of the products that I link to as well. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one. Bye!